gonna work this time. Hi guys, Joe here again. We're going to go through another training video, and this one today is on using Google Forms for tests and quizzes. So maybe you're using an online platform, maybe you're already familiar with Google Forms, maybe you need to do a survey for a PD day or see who is available on what particular day for a family vacation. Maybe you need to use it in the education setting, in the classroom, or again as teacher PD, whatever the case is. You could use it for formative assessments or summative assessments, quizzes, end of the day slips, or bell ringers, whatever you have. We're going to go through some of the utilization cases for Google Forms for tests and quizzes today. So a couple of the reasons that you may want to use Google Forms. Number one, automated grading. So once you set the answer key, as the students are going through their form, it is live grading their results. Now it doesn't give them their results until the end, whether you choose to do that. But it does grade it automatically for you. It cuts down on quite a bit of time. It can't grade short answer or paragraph, as you would imagine. You do need to go through and grade anything like that. But anything that's multiple choice or checkbox or pull down, date and time, those kind of things, it does have the ability to grade those. It also works really well with SIS Tyler 360. So in our particular use case, we use Tyler for all of our student portal, our attendance, and our gradebook. And when you use the Google Forms solution, it can import things directly into Google Classroom and then directly into Tyler SIS 360. So for us, it's really, really great. It has phenomenal analysis tools. So maybe you want to go back and see if your questions are valid. You don't understand why maybe somebody got a perfect score on the test, everybody else was missing one particular question. You can go back and see, well, maybe that kid did know that one thing, or maybe something else is going on. Maybe half the test missed one question and you want to see what question it was, or maybe you just want to see what each individual answered. You can include media. So because this is a Google product, it works incredibly well, including YouTube. It works well with Google Search. You can put photos directly from a Google search without leaving the Forms tab while you're making the test, which is really nice. You can also access Google Drive directly from your form. So a lot of things that you can do there if you want to kind of multimedialize your Google form. And then you can also use locked Chrome mode. So if your school, like ours, is a one-to-one Chromebook school, then you have the ability to lock their browser as they're taking this test so that this is the only thing that they can focus on. It kind of cuts down some of the shenanigans that you see as students try to go through tests, and certainly encourages them to do things the right way. So let's get started. There's two main ways that you can start in our particular use case. So let's say you already have Google Classroom set up for your class. You can go into the Classwork tab, and this is the picture that we see here on the left, and you can click Create and then go down to Quiz Assignment. Now, if you go down to Regular Assignment, that's what we talked about in our last training video, okay? Today's what we're talking about is using Google Forms. And if you click on Quiz Assignment, it will assume that that's what you're going to do. And so it will open it up in that way, and we'll look at that here in just a second. The other thing you can do, let's say that this is a form that you want to share with the staff, or this is a form that you want to share via a link instead of directly attached to your classroom. You can make a form in your Google Drive just by hitting on the plus icon, and then you go down to Google Forms, wherever that's located within your setup here, and then that will give you the option to generate a quiz or test once you've made the form that you would like. Okay, so setting up our quiz, we're going to, this is what the screen that you look if you start it from Google Classroom, and we're going to start right there today. Okay, so I've already gone to Classwork and I've clicked Make a Quiz Assignment. And then this is where it takes me. Now, a few things that you're going to notice right away. You have the option for a title for this assignment. You have instructions. And then you can also go down here and you can add other things. So you can add something directly from Google Drive. Let's say that you want them to have a ongoing word bank from another file. You can do that. If you want them to have link to a simulation and then they're going to come back here to answer questions, you can do that. If you want to put a YouTube video on here, you know, the old worksheet and video series that you did, this can be decent for sub work, or this can be decent for learning at home. If they're going to watch a video and then answer questions on that video, then you can attach the video directly to this assignment here. You can also create things from here that are brand new documents or brand new content that you've created that may not be in Google Drive yet, but it will start you off by default by making a blank quiz for you. And a couple of things that you're going to notice, because we said make a quiz assignment, this indicator right here is already checked for us, and this is important. We want to make sure that this is selected if we plan on knowing who made each submission. So if this is unchecked, then the students can fill this out blindly, and I don't know who answered which question. I will see their form once it's done, but it will not have their email address attached to it, so that could be a problem. So if we're going to import grades, or we need to be able to assign a particular form to an individual, we always want to make sure that grading, importing is checked, and that will also limit them to one response per user, and it will restrict them to responses from people within our domain. So since we're all in the same school system, people from an outside email address can't go in and do this. And then here's where we have locked mode on the Chromebook. So they can only answer, or they can only open up the things which are on this particular quiz. Now, let's say that you are going to use this one Google form and collect answers from every single class, and you don't need it divided up because you're not going to import the grades beyond this form. Okay, you can go through here and you can check a whole bunch of different things. Maybe it's just a survey and you just want to see some answers, and it's not even for a grade. You can select each and every class that you already have in your Google Classroom. Let's say it's a makeup test. You can go in here and you can select individual students, or it's an AP test, or let's say that students have an option to take one of two tests, or they can pass up a test, whatever it is, and you only want certain people to use it, then this will pull from the roster within this class that you've selected, and you can send it just to specific people without sending it to everybody. This part right here is very important. So on the test that I'm going to kind of show and play around with today, a sedimentary test that I've already made, it's 39 points. So I want to make sure that this value here matches the form that I'm using, and that helps with the grade import. By default, this will go to 100, but I want to make sure that it's going to be the actual point value for what I'm doing. You need to make sure that you use a due date, particularly if you're importing it into Tyler Sys, or if you want it to not be available after a certain time. You need to make sure that you assign it to a topic if you want it nested that way in your Google Classroom. So maybe you do, maybe you don't. Obviously up to you. I don't tend to use rubric too much with this because tests are relatively self-explanatory apart from individual areas. Okay, so let's go back to our presentation and see what we're going to get onto next. So now, if we've got something that we've used on a reoccurring basis, okay, we can go back to this ad and we can go to Google Drive. And when we do that, we just want to make sure that we delete this one once we've added it, because once we add a second form here, it's going to uncheck this grade importing because it can't import grades from two different boxes. So we want to make sure that we've only got one form on here if we plan to import the grades. All right, a couple of things to keep in mind if you're using a test that you've already used before or a quiz. Make sure to delete the blank form. We just talked about that and why. Delete other responses if you want to import the score. So if you're using a previously made Google form, you want to make sure that you take off all of the old scores, unless it's something where you're trying to keep a cumulative total answers from the history of the test itself across multiple years, in which case you would want to leave them. Make sure that all of the links work, just good fact checking before you send something out. And then double check that the points match the points in the form. And we talked about why that was important just a moment ago. Okay, so for making a new test, let's take a look at that. So we're going to open up our blank quiz here, all right? And I've kind of already got some things going with us. All right, let's go back and let's say that we don't like any of these things that we've done. We can just delete them, and then we can come back here in just a minute and we can add those things in as we're going through it. All right, so we'll do that together here. So this is what you're going to see. You're going to see a few things. Number one, you're going to see the name of the quiz. You're going to see a form description. So let's say this particular quiz has specific instructions, or there's a couple things you want to remind them. Maybe you want to put in a formula up there, whatever it is. You can do all those things up there. All right, so here I'm going to type my question number one. So let's say this is the first question. All right, and I want to give them, it'll give me some suggestions based on what it is. So let's say that I like all of those options. There's a yes, this is the first. No, it's not. Maybe it is. All right, and then we also want to say other. Okay, now we've got this right now selected as multiple choice. So if you'll click on this, you can change it to all sorts of different types of answers. So you've got short answer, which is just what it seems. It's a sentence or two. You've got paragraph, which is quite a bit longer. Then you've got checkboxes. Let's say we don't want to know one particular answer. Let's say we want to say which applies to the above thing, whatever it is, and we want them to be able to check multiple things. Then they can do that. File upload. If we want it to be a file upload, then let's say we're going to say something like go to Google Draw and give me a isosceles triangle. then they will have the ability to upload the file that they generate as a result of that work. Linear scale, multiple choice grid. So if we want to have something that's columns and rows, and they have to go through and they have to match up the things, it's good for matching. Checkbox grid. I like to use this one in my geology class quite a bit, which of the physical and chemical traits apply to these particular minerals. That's good for that. And then date and time, they're selecting off a calendar or a timeline. All right. A couple other things that we want to pay attention to here. This one right here, require a response in each row. Let's go back to multiple choice. Okay, do we want this to be a required question or not? And I try to always make sure this is clicked for mine, because I don't want kids just say, oh, I don't know that, and refusing to guess, right? So I make sure that this is always required. And then I come over here and I also, let's move my picture up there, I also click shuffle option order. And now when I do that, for me this is going to stay exactly the same. Okay, but when I duplicate my question, these things are checked, and now when I go over here to my preview area, I can see exactly the way the test is going to look to the students, and I'll see that the first question, right, is no, yes, maybe, but the second question is yes, no, maybe. So it's taken the opportunity to mix those up, and that kind of helps students not lean on their peers as they're working through this stuff. So a few different options that you have. If you want to import questions or an entire set of questions from, let's say, another Google form, then you certainly do have that ability as well. If you go to import questions here, then it will give you some of the forms that you have the opportunity to edit, and you can only do that from forms that you edit, and it will look like this once you do that, and it will give you all of the questions that are on that particular form, and then you can either hit all of them, or you can go through and click the ones that you want, and it will import them into this without bringing all the data that's attached with the answers on that other form with it. Okay, answer feedback. So let's go back to this, and then let's click on our answer key. Okay, so let's say that we want this particular question to be worth 2 points. We'll give it a point value, and then you'll notice the total points for the test up here changes. And then we want yes to be, well, actually this is the second one. So let's say that this is no. We don't want yes to be an option. But then up here, we do want yes to be an option. All right. Oh, excuse me. Answer key. Then we come up here. Now, you'll see this thing here, add answer feedback. Now, answer feedback's really neat. Let's say that for everybody that gets this wrong, I want them to know a certain thing. It is by definition the first question. All right? Or let's say that I don't want to say that. Let's just say that I want to put a video that goes over a concept again for them. Let's say this is a take-home test, and I got a 30-second video that would actually go over this. Then I can attach that or a link. Let's say that they get it right, and I just want to simply say something like, good job. You can do that. Okay, and then when they answer that question, if they get the correct answer, then it'll pop up just like that, good job. All right, and so that's a really nice option that you can give immediate feedback right now as the students are working through their test. Now, this is one of the ultimate benefits to using Google Forms. It's the analytics portion. Now, there's 3 different tabs, and you can see I've kind of already got those pulled up for our sedimentary test that we've seen. We've got the summary tab, we've got the question tab, and we've got the individual tab. So let's pop over here to our sedimentary test, and let's look at some of these questions. So you can see some of the various types of questions. We've got true false, we've got check all that apply, we've got one here that's a multiple check grid, so they have to rate this from 1 being smallest, 5 being the largest. We've got some pictures that they have to identify, and then we've got a drop down menu over there. Okay, so we've got all kinds of different things, but we want to go over here to our responses, and we want to see some of the different trend in our responses as the students were working through this. So on this one, we're going to see an average. So the average on this particular test across 27 responses was 31 out of 39. The median was 33, and then the range was all the way down to 12 up to 39. So we can see that. Now, when we go, I'm going to use this other presentation for that so we don't see any names. Let's say that we want to see the question specifically. We can see all 17 answers from this particular, or excuse me, all 17 questions, all 27 responses on this particular question. So I just scroll through here and it will show me each and every one of them. And so the nice thing is it also groups it. So there were 27 responses that gave me this. So in this one, that was exactly right. So everybody answered that one correct. But it will group them by like responses. So if 2 people put sedimentary igneous and didn't click metamorphic, then it would show me one right here that says sedimentary igneous without metamorphic checked, and it would have 2, and then I click on it and it would tell me which 2. So it's kind of nice to see visually exactly how many people got each question and what their answers were as they're grouped together. Maybe everybody's answering it exactly wrong, or there was a misspelling, something like that. And then over here, you've got the individual tab. Now this will give you the student's name, which we've got blacked out. It will show you how many people, they're number 1 of 27 that's taken this, and it will go through just like you have a paper test in front of you, their exact test and how they did on it. A couple other thoughts as we're starting to wrap up here. You can see the test via the preview button. We've already looked at that. You can also submit an answer that way. So let's say that you want to try the test. Let's say we want to say no, yes, and then we click on submit in this preview area. Without actually doing it, we can actually see that, and we can submit another response, and it'll say your response has been recorded. Then we come back over here and we can see there's 2 responses, and then we can go through here and we can see what those 2 responses were. So that's kind of nice if you need to utilize this in a less formal way. You can change the theme to make the quiz look nicer, and that's something just to keep in mind as you're working through these things. These tabs up here, so there's our preview button, here's our theme button. Over here, we have our settings. Now, this is also an important area that you need to keep in mind. As you're going through this, you want to make sure that you've got collect email addresses, particularly if this is a graded quiz. So for us, we're in Fort Zumwalt School District, so we want to make sure that only people with Fort Zumwalt School District emails can access this thing, and we want it to be limited 1 response per person. Can they edit after they submit it? That's something you probably don't want on a test, but maybe on a survey about dates that people are available, you do want that. Over here on the presentation tab, shuffle question order. Now, on our test that we showed just a moment ago, there is something down here that is a picture as part of a question, and we've got a description down here. Okay, we want to make sure if we include a picture that's used for multiple questions, that this thing is not checked, because it will take all of those questions and it will throw them all around the area, and we want to make sure that we have the ability to keep those questions in order. If we don't have something like that and each question is its own thing with its own media, then by all means shuffle that, and that's another good way to make sure that students aren't encouraging each other to put down specific answers. And then down here, confirmation message. Once they've hit submit, you can put down something that you would like them to see, and that will pop up once they've done that. I've used this before to put a URL to other forms. So if I have a multiple form quiz or test with several different forms on it that I've combined, like my final, then once they finish a section, it will pop up with this link to the next one, and it will go on from there. And then the quizzes tab. Do you want lock mode on? Make this a quiz. Do you want them to be able to see their grade immediately, or do you want to check it first yourself and then send it? So maybe you've got a whole half of your test is a short answer, and you don't want them to know their test because it's going to grade all of those wrong. You don't want them to see their grade until after you've looked at it. Then you would hit later after manual, and then the things that they can see. A couple other notes as we're closing up. If you want to use this again, you can go right here to make a copy. A pre-filled link is useful if you're using this like I do in track coaching. Maybe you want to use a multiple choice grid as an attendance. I got my roster on my left, and then on my first column I've got present, and all of those are already marked present. And then I open that up every day by getting a pre-filled link. It'll say present. I can just go click the 3 or 4 kids that aren't there rather than go through a list of 40 kids, whether they're there or not, and I've taken attendance in about 4 seconds, and it'll give me a date stamped response on my summaries page for that. You can also add collaborators if you're sharing this, or if you guys are co-teaching, what have you. And there's also various other add-ons that people can use as they're working through these things. So it's a great tool. I would certainly encourage you to utilize this for your test taking abilities, particularly if you're somebody that likes to analyze the results of tests. It is absolutely great. So I hope everybody's doing well and staying safe, and reach out to me if there's something that you have a question about, or there's something that you'd like to know. Maybe there's something you could share with me. I appreciate it, and take care. Goodbye.